Sorry, last night when you said you were prepared to send more than the National Guard into American cities.
Sure, I would do that if it was necessary. You know, if it was necessary to do that, but it hasn't been necessary. We're doing a great job without that. It was necessary. As you know, I'm allowed to do that.
Do you think other branches of the military you would send in, or
who are you with?
the New York Times?
That's very good. Very good. Well, you're right indirectly. I'll give you the answer.
The word I kept hearing from them was embarrassment, because if you look at that picture and you listen or have viewed what happened yesterday in Quantico, you saw myriad numbers of Silver Star awards. You saw myriad Purple Hearts, Bronze Stars, Combat Infantry badges, and they were being lectured on how to do push-ups and lose weight and shave. And it was truly mortifying. But the larger question is, going forward, what happens to the military with this internal dissension that you can seemingly feel when you witness an event like yesterday?
Yeah, when those who once swore to defend the chain of command start questioning the commander-in-chief, it's pretty clear that all the hoorahs from the Secretary of War aren't quite cutting it.
So all of the folks in that room have been wearing the uniform for 30 or 40 years. They have 20 years of experience in 2 wars or maybe more. And they kind of know what they're doing, and they know how to control and command and lead their soldiers. So when you're told to do things that run contrary to what the experiences are that these folks bring into the room, it becomes very troubling. And I think I won't speak for all of them, but I have spoken to a few that were in that room, and they were troubled by what they heard. And they're afraid of how it's going to affect the American people at the same time. What do our citizens feel about what the military will do, should do, can do? There are a lot of our fellow citizens who tell me, hey, why don't you guys do something about this? Well, that's not what we do. We obey the orders of the civilian authority unless they're illegal. And we don't interfere potentially in politics. So all of those things play a part of, truthfully, what the military does, who we are, that a lot of people don't understand, and how we conduct operations. And many of the things we've been hearing in terms of strategy and operations and what we're being asked to do are contrary to what we see as the values and the ideologies of our nation.
Retired Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, former commanding general of the U.S. Army Europe, publicly condemned Donald Trump's recent politicization of the armed forces. Hertling said that the gathering Trump promoted through ally Pete Hegseth was, quote, somewhat shocking and filled with mistruths. Of course it is. It's Donald Trump we're talking about. He went on to add that he, quote, felt compelled to stick up for the defense of the American military, which of course is great. More need to do this. For a man who's spent nearly 4 decades defending the chain of command, breaking ranks this way is not just rare, right? It's revealing. And by the way, it's not the first time that this has happened this month even.
It is not rare for a general to retire early because of misgivings or whatever. But so far in the Trump administration, we've had almost 20 of them who have been asked to leave of all different ilks. And some of the ones that were asked to leave or retire were some of the very best and brightest. And you can't see where they've done anything wrong. It's just disagreement. And disagreement, as we learn in the military, is not disrespect. The other thing that I'd say, one of the Army's 7 professional values is personal courage. And that's just not personal courage on the battlefield. It's personal courage in terms of speaking up and offering your advice, because that's what military folks are asked to do. And I think in both of these cases, they gave their advice, and it was so counter to what the Department of Defense is trying to do right now that instead of, saluting and driving on, they were told, you don't belong in this organization anymore, so you need to retire.
as is par for the course with this administration, criticism often has company. Within the ranks of active command, murmurs of discontent have turned into exits. We know about Admiral Alvin Halsey, head of the US Southern Command, the very command overseeing Trump's controversial maritime strikes. He abruptly retired less than a year into his post, with sources telling Politico that Halsey's departure came amid mounting internal friction over the legality and strategy of those very operations.
Well, I think that there's always a choice, and you're right about the demand issue, and I wish that we could do more about that. And this has been going on forever, that we have a drug consumption problem here and a drug supply problem coming from South and Latin America. So I totally get that. But when you're looking at how this fight is being executed at this particular moment, it doesn't make a lot of sense. First and foremost, the fact that no one can confirm that we've actually been taking out narco traffickers or huge drug traffickers, however you want to say it. And last week when we were talking about this, Dana had just seen the alert that the admiral in charge of the Southern Command had resigned. And he was the one who was in charge of this. And the reporting is that he wasn't comfortable with the mission and had been pushing back within the Pentagon. And do you think he would have resigned if everything was by the book? So we have 32 people that have been killed so far, 7 individual strikes. We know that the Colombian president is alleging at least that an innocent fisherman was murdered. We know that there's a family from Trinidad who's saying that a member of their family was killed. And then it is really important that we have repatriated 2 people, one to Colombia, one to Ecuador, because that indicates that we don't have any evidence to prosecute them, that we didn't know who these guys were. Because if you did have evidence, you would bring them before a court. And I know that you're going to make fun of me, and I am prepared for it each and every day, but drug traffickers also have rights. The law applies. We should have the evidence. They should be charged with something, and they should come before a court of law. And Rand Paul was on the Sunday shows this weekend, and he said to Kristen Welker, when you kill someone, if you're not in a declared war, which we are not, Congress with the war powers, you really need to know someone's name at least. You have to accuse them of something. You have to present evidence. So all these people have been blown up without any evidence of a crime. They're also saying that it's about fentanyl, and people who analyze the area are saying that there is drugs that go through, but it's mostly cocaine and marijuana that are headed actually to Europe and to Africa. So the government story is not adding up.
Concern that's now shared amongst Republicans. I mean, look at this past weekend on Fox. Senator Rand Paul joined Tim Kaine on Fox of all places to shed light on what he has described as extrajudicial killings. Those words from a Republican senator on Fox News during a Trump term. I mean, think about that. It marks a stunning break from the Trump doctrine of unilateral action.
You, Senator Paul, what do you need to hear in a briefing? What questions do you have?
You know, it's not so much about a briefing, but we haven't had a briefing. To be clear, we've got no information. I've been invited to no briefing. But a briefing is not enough to overcome the Constitution. The Constitution says that when you go to war, Congress has to vote on it. And during a war, then, there's a lower rules for engagement. And people do sometimes get killed without due process. But the drug war or the crime war has typically been something we do through law enforcement. And so far, they have alleged that these people are drug dealers. No one said their name. No one said what evidence. No one said whether they're armed. And we've had no evidence presented. So at this point, I would call them extrajudicial killings. And this is akin to what China does, to Iran does with drug dealers. They summarily execute people without presenting evidence to the public. So it's wrong.
Number one, there is no fentanyl made in Venezuela. Not just a little bit. There's none being made in Venezuela. These are outboard boats that in order for them to get to Miami would have to stop and refuel 20 times. They're in all likely going to Trinidad and Tobago, which is an island right off of the coast of Venezuela. So there's a lot of reasons to be worried about this. But number one is the broader principle of when can you kill people indiscriminately? When you're at war. That's why when we declare war, it's supposed to be done by Congress. It's supposed to be thoughtful. It's supposed to be debated. And we're not supposed to do it willy-nilly. And then when you have war, you just kill people in the war zone. And even then there are rules of engagement. But interdicting drugs has always been a criminal activity and a criminal anti-crime sort of activity where we don't just summarily execute people. We actually present evidence and convict them.
Senators Tim Kaine and Adam Schiff have joined Republicans like Rand Paul and Mike Lee to demand that the White House seek approval before deploying further lethal operations abroad. It's a rare moment of bipartisan unity during a shutdown, let's keep in mind. So tonight, I ask, if the defenders or past defenders of your military start defending themselves from your leadership and your allies start demanding the rule book, does that scream strength through force or just an abuse of power?
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.